OneXPlayer first showed up on my radar when they had the gaming handheld that was much bigger than anyone else's, and it seems like they are taking one more step in their journey towards a TV with giant controllers on the side of it with the OneXPlayer X1. That's right, my friends, this is a handheld gaming PC. How big are your hands, people? Look, I'm allowed to make small hands jokes. How dare you censor me, editor? Ooh, it's heavy. It's funny for me because my wife just picked up Dave the Diver on our ROG Ally, and even at that size, every time I look at her, she's got it firmly planted against something to ensure that her arms don't get fatigued. With this thing, you'd have to be Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson to be able to actually hold this in front of you and game on it for an extended period of time. Look at this. I accidentally dropped it in a previous take and it frickin' destroyed the packaging. In here, we find the charger, which is a 100-watt charger. It supports USB power delivery at up to 20 volts and comes with a, not really satisfactorily long USB-C cable. I'd like to see this a little bit on the longer side, maybe more like 5 feet. Realistically, we saw as much as 6 hours of battery life on this thing in our endurance test, but as little as just over an hour in our torture test. So depending on your configuration, you're probably gonna be gaming for about 2 hours and change, and then you're gonna wanna be plugged into the wall while you use it. Guess better buy yourself a fancy USB cable. One of the big controversies, maybe not controversy, but certainly something for you to consider around this device is that it uses Intel's Core Ultra 7 155H, which has 6 high-performance cores, can be paired with up to 64 gigs of LPDDR5X memory, up to 4 terabytes of storage, and in every configuration, Intel Arc graphics. We're gonna get into performance a little bit more later. First, let's take a look at the accessories, because this is not just a handheld, with OneXPlayer making this keyboard accessory available, which I guess makes the screen size make a lot more sense. Like if this thing's half gaming handheld, half, whoa, it's kind of like a little mini Surface. That's pretty cool. Of course, the keyboard is optional, so we'll take a closer look at that later. First, I want to see the definitely non-infringing detachable game controllers. First impressions, not bad. They've got a bit of a soft touch feel to them, but the finish is just plastic, so you won't have to worry about them turning all gross and sticky over time. There were some notes from the lab about how the ABXY buttons felt kind of weird, like it's a micro switch at the bottom, but there's an awful lot of travel. I see it. It feels kind of like a rubber dome that collapses and then it hits a micro switch. Yeah, it's a bit of a weird, mushy feeling. I wouldn't say that it bothers me, but I'm not a fan of that kind of configuration for something like a D-pad, and it feels like they used the exact same switches. One thing that some folks will appreciate though is the use of these full-sized Alps gaming grade, which I guess means they have RGB, joysticks, and the inclusion of a rear button that you can remap to whatever you need. Triggers feel good. Shoulders feel all right. Let's have a look at the attachment mechanism. Hold on just a gosh darn second here. So you pull off this, which is going to get lost immediately, and then you put this on, and it interferes with your micro SD slot. That's kind of a drag. Also here is a USB 3 Type A, which is definitely a welcome addition if you're going to be using this thing as an actual laptop. Up top, we've got a turbo button, which I will definitely be trying out later. Ventilation hole. This is actually a really nice aluminum chassis. The thing feels, while heavy, definitely well built. An Oculink port. Super cool. So that's PCIe Gen 4x4, and if you have a compatible dock, that means you can run an eGPU without some of the, well, hassle that can be associated with Thunderbolt, although without some of the convenience of Thunderbolt, meaning it's not going to be hot pluggable. We've got a 3.5mm headphone jack, and, oh, that's curious, they reversed the typical position of volume up and volume down. I would expect volume up to be on the right. Here's our power button. Does that have a built-in fingerprint sensor? It does. Nice. On the left, we've got 2 USB-C, no way. Did they really put, yeah, they did. There's no way you're getting any real actual cable plugged into that bottom one. Not the end of the world, because At least it does have one that's accessible, but I can't say that I'm a huge fan. Then at the bottom, we've got a dock interface for the detachable keyboard. Man, that's kind of weird. It feels like, oh, it does come off. This intake is accounted for in the back cover. This appears to be an intake, but is not accounted for. The only other thing to see back here is the Harman branding. They've apparently worked with Harman to tune the audio on this thing to, I'm sorry, I'm having a hard time taking this seriously at this point now. This is hilarious. As comical as it might look and as heavy as the device might be though, the controllers managed to feel pretty solid. There's definitely a little bit more play in the left one compared to the one on the right, but either one I would consider to be acceptable, is not the sort of thing that I would notice over an extended period of time. And what's not comical at all is the sheer expansiveness of this thing. Kind of like it. It's freaking huge. Not only that, but this display, kinda sick. 2560 by 1600, so that's a 16 by 10 aspect ratio, really nice pixel density. It manages to achieve even better than the 540 nits of peak brightness that they rate it for. And it manages 99% coverage of the P3 color gamut while being reasonably accurate, especially if you enable the compensation within Windows. That doesn't work great on all devices, but does work well on this one, and all of that, and it runs at 120 Hertz. Now, the Arc GPU in here might struggle to run games at that kind of refresh rate and resolution, but hey, don't let me tell you, let me show you. After this message from our sponsor, Magic Spoon. Most of the cereals you find on the store shelf these days are loaded with sugar, not Magic Spoon. Their health-conscious cereals have 0 grams of sugar, 13 to 14 grams of protein, and only 4 to 5 net grams of carbs per serving. You can build your own variety box with flavors that are reminiscent of your favorite cereals, like fruity and frosted, and best of all, Magic Spoon's products are 100% satisfaction guaranteed. Don't like what you got? Let them know, and Magic Spoon will fully refund your first case of products. So click the link below and use code Linus for $5 off a Magic Spoon variety box. All right, let's play a variety box of games here, shall we? Ooh, I kind of thought I was okay with the ABXYs. They're not good. While the simple mushiness of them isn't the worst that I've seen by a long shot, this joystick being right here makes it kind of a chore to press it unless you're really adjusting the ergonomics. And on something like a Nintendo Switch, that's no problem because the thing's so light, you can kind of hold it however you want. Here, you really gotta hold on to this thing, and I'm not a big fan of that A position. Like, I'm not exaggerating. If I want to press this with this part of my thumb, I mean, you might have bigger hands, so your mileage may vary, but not a fan. When I have my hands covering the controller, it doesn't look quite as ridiculous. If anything, it looks great. I mean, it's almost an 11-inch display. This is basically the equivalent of sitting like, yeah, this distance from a flippin' 65-inch TV. But when you see the controllers, it's like, yeah, look at them, they're so cute. Something, friends and family, work, freedom, life. That is so cool. I'm keeping her there forever. Okay, we have a pretty close family friend who's deaf, and whenever I see my family and I'm talking to her, she like does the equivalent of signing like this for me. Like, thank you, Danielle. Because I can't understand you otherwise. I'm pretty slow, I'm rusty. It's just funny because an audible version of that would be like, bonjour, Linus. This is running a lot better than I expected. After all the issues that I've heard about with the Core Ultra 7 155H, not to mention the ones that I experienced on the early drivers when I was checking out the MSI Claw at CES, I was expecting a lot more of that kind of, it almost feels like rubber banding because the frame rate will drop and then go up and then drop and then go up. Oh, ha! Okay, that was more of just a stutter, but kind of like that, actually. It looks like they've improved a lot since then. But one of Intel's big problems with their Arc Alchemist generation GPUs is inconsistency from one game to the next. One game will run great, and another one will be dog shite. In fact, one of our games, Returnal, we weren't even able to include in our results because the physics in the game went all wonky. Intel says they're working on this, but we don't have an ETA for the fix. Actually, what I was playing around with right now was the joysticks. Basically, very little in the way of dead zones. They advertise nothing, essentially, and while I'm sure there is something, I'm not able to detect it. Usually, I'm pretty sensitive to them too. I'm a really good driver as long as I don't have dead zones. You can see that, right? God, this display though. Man, that's sick. It's not even cranked. Woo! Look at her go! Wow! No HDR support, mind you, but SDR looks absolutely flippin' awesome. I bet you'd even be able to play outside with this thing. I really like these joysticks. OneXPlayer doesn't say specifically on the product page if they're Hall effect, but they feel really good. Let's take a short gaming break and have a look at some of OneXPlayer's software, which in the past for me has been a weak point of their systems against competitors like the Ally. Which one is their software? Oh, there it is. Nice. Do we have a shortcut for it? You hit the turbo button. You hit the turbo button? God, I pressed everything. Okay, this is bad. Let's start over, shall we? Turbo button. Perfect. There's the software. We're in the 35 watt mode. That could explain part of why the performance doesn't suck, because it was especially more moderate TDPs that the Claw was suffering the last time that I looked at it. That and 35 watts is a lot. You're not gonna get a ton of battery life out of that. Typically, I'm gonna be using my devices in more like the 15 watt range, unless I'm really trying to get maximum performance, in which case, yeah, you might go up to about 30. Fan mode is automatic. Curiously, we found that it tracks with the iGPU temperature rather than with the package temperature. So that's good for gaming in that you can be running a game and pretty much immediately the fan will kick in like Jake's car, but it can be kind of unfortunate in that you can have a Windows update running in the background using 20%, 25% of the CPU, and your temps will spike and the fan will just stay idle almost. This is nice, being able to change the reported resolution of the display. There you go. Can't decide whether I'd go for 1920 by 1200 or 1280 by 800. That is not a lot of pixels at this size. You'd probably have to go with 1920 by 1200. Why don't we have a look at the keyboard case? Now, it's worth noting that this is a prototype unit and not fully representative of the final quality. OneXPlayer went out of their way to say, hey, don't judge the keyboard too harshly. This is pretty early, and we're gonna have a pinned comment if the final version that they sent us is markedly different, but it at least gives us a chance to have a look at what the ergonomics of the setup will look like with the keyboard trackpad attachment piece. This feels like such a monstrosity. Look at this. It's hilarious, especially with the controllers still attached to it. Let's go ahead and get our rivet tuner thing set up. Okay, that's a pretty stiff click. I can see what the labs was talking about on the trackpad. Wow, that's really stiff. Okay, but prototype. Let's try. Ooh. I mean, there's some give, but this is very usable. I would say with some improvements. This is definitely a thick tablet computer handheld thing. Oh! Guys, that's why the volume rocker's like that. It's a tablet. We'll turn the auto rotate on. There's your problem right there. Yeah, I think that's going to be the minority of the time that people spend using this, but I think I found the rationale at least. No, okay, fine. You guys are a terrible audience. Not you. The people who are sitting in this room with me and it's like acting like they're dead. Coming back to the software for a moment, one of the things that was really weird about this is we found a turbo button in the software here, and then we found a second Intel Turbo Boost toggle in the cog menu here. As far as we can tell, the best way to run it is with this off, which doesn't seem to do anything, and turbo on in the OneXPlayer slide-in menu. Oh, it has a, oh, mouse gyro. It's smooth. Gotta love that 120 hertz display. Freaking love that. We can turn it on if the left trigger gets pressed. Oh, that's pretty cool. So this is useful obviously for navigating windows like I'm doing right now, but also for playing FPS games, because I don't know about you guys, but for me, playing first-person shooters with a controller joystick, I really struggle with it. Whereas when we did that video a couple of years back using the PlayStation 4 as a gyro aimer, and then just the buttons for movement and weapon switching and all that stuff, made a huge difference for me. Out of the box, it's configured to allocate 16 gigabytes of the onboard memory to the GPU in this particular configuration. Your mileage may vary with that. I've been instructed to try the webcam. I mean, I guess if this is gonna be your laptop, then you're gonna want a decent webcam. That's cool. It has the IR emitter so that you can use it with Windows Hello for biometric authentication. And I think I see an array mic there, so the recording quality on this thing might actually be decent. Do they really brand it as an AI camera? Have they said what makes it AI?
Autofocus tracking.
Autofocus tracking. I mean, I look as good in any place as I ever do. It's only a 1 megapixel camera, and no amount of AI is going to fix that too much. And the audio is as good as what it is right now. Let's try out CrabRave, speaking of audio. I searched for CrabRave, youtube.com. Bing, get good. The first result is Bing videos. With that said, this will just play the YouTube video, and it won't have ads, so it's kind of a hack. Did you know this? Yeah, there's no ads.
That's piracy, Linus.
No, that's not piracy. That's a workaround. All right, let's turn on the sound. It's Wi-Fi 6E, so that's good, but not the best. Very decent. Not bad. Actually pretty impressed. Not an amazing soundstage, but pretty reasonable quality. On the subject of things not amazing, we've got Returnal fired up now, which looks fine right now, but we haven't tried to run the benchmark yet. Give me a second here. I see. There's supposed to be shrapnel there, but instead there just kind of isn't. And as much as this isn't OneXPlayer's fault, this is down to Intel's optimization of their ARC drivers. It's definitely something that OneXPlayer has to deal with, and something that will affect the users of this device. What will also affect users of the device is the performance compared to AMD-based devices like the Ally and the Lenovo Legion Go. And the reason I bring up the Legion Go is not because I was particularly enthused about it when I used it, but because it is a large screen device that would be at least closer to equivalent to this one. Hopefully Intel can continue to improve that, because the bones overall are pretty cool. It doesn't get obnoxiously loud, and the size of the screen makes it a truly unique experience compared to other handhelds. The only other obstacle then is the price. You can buy over 1.5 Legion Go's for the price of this thing, and almost 2 Allies, both of which will perform better. Hey look, it's my wife. Hey Yvonne, come try this. So you've been playing some Dave the Diver on the Ally. What do you think of the weight and ergonomics of this boy?
It's really heavy, actually. Is it not? Do I have that wrong?
No, I mean, you can't be wrong about whether something is heavy to you. I mean, I said that you were basically She-Hulk and that it wouldn't bother you earlier when I was talking about it, but like, sure, go ahead and contradict me. Just like with the kids.
I find the triggers easier to hold. This one's harder to press, but this one's easier to press.
Compared to the Ally?
Yeah.
Okay.
I like the bigger screen, that's cool.
All right, thanks, hon.
Okay.
And thank you for watching. Subscribe to ShortCircuit.